Hi bookish friends, welcome back to my channel. So today's vlog is going to be just a realistic reading week for me while I work. So I do work a 40-hour a week job and I try to get to work early because of the time I start and I have to drive through the city. So I do try to read a little bit before work. Sometimes I get a lunch break, so I'll read then, and then I try to get at least an hour of reading in at home every night. It does depend based on what I have to do, if I have anything going on. This week I don't, as of right now, have anything going on during the week. Something could pop up, but I don't know for sure. So I'm going to just do like a realistic week of reading for me when I have work for 5 days. I'm going to just kind of go through the books that I think I'm going to read this week, starting with The Deal by Elle Kennedy. I am pretty much like 60% of the way through this book. I am going to read a little bit more tonight. Right now it is Sunday night, so I'm not sure how many more pages I'll have in the morning. I only have like 150 pages left, but I do not think I'm finishing this tonight, so I will be starting this at least in the morning when I'm at work. And I'm loving this so far. I actually went and bought The Mistake, which is the second book today, because I have a feeling I'm going to want to just binge this series, even though I only have this one on my TBR this month. Then the next book I'm going to read is The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare by Kimberly Brock. And the third one on the docket for the week is Renegades by Marissa Meyer. I don't know how quickly I'm going to get through these. Like I said, I'm just going to read what I can. I do try to read at least 150 pages a day, but that doesn't always happen. So this week is just kind of going to go through a normal week in my life and see what I can get through reading wise. I will touch base again tomorrow evening with how far I made it throughout the day, but I won't actually have a page count. I'll be a day late on the page count. So like Tuesday, I'll give you my page count for Monday and so on and so forth. And then I will finish the vlog out on Saturday morning so that any reading I get done Friday night, I can calculate in there as well. That is where that stands. And I will talk to you all tomorrow when I get home from work. Hey everyone, it's Monday now. And I finished The Deal this morning at work. And I freaking loved this book. I am so excited to read the rest of the series. I only had about 70 pages when I got to work this morning, so I knew I'd be able to finish it this morning, and I freaking loved it. I loved it so much. I love Garrett Graham. I love Hannah. I think they are the cutest couple ever, and I'm excited to see where the rest of the series goes. I just saw Alexa Ray talk about this series yesterday when I was watching a video, and she said she didn't like the second book, so that makes me a little nervous, but we'll see. I want to read the whole series, so I will eventually get there, and I did just buy the second one. So at some point in the next few months, I plan on getting to that one. And then I started The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare at lunch. So I only got about 30 pages in, 35 pages in. And right now, all I know is that we're following Claire. Is that her name? No, Alice. All I know right now is that we're following Alice and her daughter Pen. And they are descendants of the Dares, I assume. We haven't really established that yet, but I assume that they are. And her father just passed away. Her grandmother's still living and she's a widow. Her mother had died when she was younger and her husband died in the war in like Italy or something. So we're following her and her daughter going to her mother's house that she hasn't been to since her mother died, because she inherited that when her dad died. And they're going to kind of see what they can get for the land and everything, because she wants to be able to get her daughter out of the small town in Georgia that they live in and into a better circumstance. So she's trying to see like what they can do with that land to get money to be able to get her daughter into a good school and everything. So that is where I am right now. They did show up at the house and there was like somebody there that she wasn't expecting. Like the caretaker was still there. And they've started to talk a little bit about like the Dare Stone, which is part of history, so it's not really a spoiler, and Roanoke and that whole thing, but very, very briefly touched on that because the daughter doesn't really know everything that Claire's talking about in her head. Why are we calling her Claire? The daughter doesn't really know everything that Alice keeps talking about in her head. We're just getting like bits and pieces of it right now, but it's interesting. I'm hoping it picks up. Obviously, it's going to be a little bit of a building beginning because the story has to develop and we're not starting with like the original Dares. We're starting centuries later. I'm interested. So far, so good. I'm going to continue reading. I don't know if I'll check in again tonight. I might, but I'll have a final page count for Monday tomorrow. I've also started reading Michael Bolton's biography. I'm just kind of reading it like a chapter at a time when I get a chance, so I may be reading that a little bit this week. I forgot to mention that in the intro, but it won't be something that I'm trying to complete this week. It's just I may want a little bit of a break from these books and read a chapter or so those pages may be counted as well. Just a heads up. that nobody asked for. So I will continue reading. I got some things to do, so I'm not going to start right now. I'm going to eat dinner. I have a video to edit, and then I will get to reading and catch up with you guys either later tonight or tomorrow. Hey guys, so update from today, I guess. I'm still reading The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare. I'm enjoying this book. It is a little slow because I feel like it's a lot repetitive and there's a lot of detail. It is a historical fiction, so they're trying to build in a lot of the stuff going on in the war that's currently going on, and also the Roanoke and that whole aspect of the Lost Colony. So there's like dueling historical parts of this, and then also like the present time when we're with like Alice and her daughter and the other characters in the book. I'm not sure exactly who I explained, but basically Alice and Penn go to her family's estate to get it ready to be sold, and there's people that currently live on the estate that she doesn't really want to kick off, so she's trying to work with them to figure out how she can sell it, but they can still have their part of it. And Doris is one of them. I can't remember the other guy's name. Sonder. And so Sonder's like the caretaker, and then Doris, I'm not sure exactly what she does, but like her mother, Alice's mother, gave Doris part of the land and a house to live in back before she had passed. So Doris still lives there, Sonder still lives there. Neither of them want her to sell the land. Not that she'd like screw them over. There is like plans for them to keep their part of it, but they just don't think that anybody but that family should own it. It's always been in the Dare family and her family. So there's people in the town arguing against her selling it. The lawyer doesn't even want her to sell it. And you're learning bits and pieces of their history within like finding out about this book, that the Lost Book, I assume that it is, that every Dare female relative has had at some point, and they've added to it, and there's just like a bunch of different things in it. Some like normal household things, but then also some things that Penn thinks are magical. So Penn is trying to manifest this magic and stuff with her, and I'm not exactly sure where that's going yet, because her mother, like Alice, is really trying to be like, no, it's just myth, there's nothing there, like don't waste your time. But Alice is having trouble convincing Penn that there's nothing there, because Penn's a teenage girl and she knows everything. So I'm assuming that's going to come into play much more prevalent in the second part of the book. I'm about 50%. I'm like literally just at 50% of the way through the book. I'm going to continue reading tonight. I don't know how far I'll get because I have work tomorrow, but I don't have to be until later because I'm going off-site. So I do get to sleep in a little, which means I'll probably get up and then end up reading. Follow up from yesterday's book page count. I read 182 pages yesterday. It was 11 pages, I think, from The Soul of It All, which is the Michael Bolton book. Math is hard. 105 pages from this book, and then I will have to do the math, and I'll just put the 3 books and how many pages I read, because the deal, I'd have to do math, and I don't feel like doing that right now. It's around 68 pages or so. So I will put that up there. So total, I read 182 pages yesterday. I'm at just 113 so far today, but I do plan on reading for a little bit longer tonight. So like I said, I like to try to get to at least 150 pages. I'm hoping to read more this evening, but it really just depends on how tired I get. I wanted to read more last night, and I couldn't keep my eyes open. Such is life. So I will update you all tomorrow, either in the morning. Maybe I'll do a page count in the morning since I don't have to rush out of the house, and then in the afternoon, we can just talk about what book I'm on and what's going on. So I'll talk to you all later. Hey everyone, real quick update. It's now Wednesday. I have 130 pages left of Eleanor Dare, and it's picking up. I'm liking where the story's going now that we're kind of through explaining the background of everything. I read 199 pages of just this book yesterday. I didn't pick up any other book. So that was Tuesday's page count. And I'm gonna read this a little bit before I have to head out to the show, and then I'll hopefully finish this book up today and maybe even get started on the next one. So I just finished The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare. I did get a little bit more reading in than normal today because I didn't have to go like into work. I went somewhere else and it was much closer to home. So I did get to sleep in a little, got to read a little more in the morning, and then I got back a little bit earlier. So realistically, I read all of this today, but it's not a typical day for me because I did have a little bit more time. I enjoyed this book. It was more of like it was a historical fiction, but it was really just kind of like you're following this girl and her mom in trying to figure out their lives now that they've inherited this land and that her father has died, and they're still dealing with like the ramifications of losing her husband in the war. So you're dealing with a lot of that, and you're learning the story of their ancestry, which is the Dare family, and that there's this like myth surrounding the female heirs of the Dare line. And there's a little bit of magic in here, a little. And there's a very interesting like side story about this author's take on what actually happened to Eleanor Dare. So that was kind of cool. It was something like I never would have thought of, but it makes sense. So that was fun. I enjoyed it. It was definitely out of my comfort zone, but I would recommend this if you like historical fiction, if you like just a good read about a mother and a daughter trying to figure out their relationship now that they're in a kind of a different part of their lives. Definitely recommend that. So now I'm going to start The Renegades by Marissa Meyer, first book in the Renegades trilogy. This is my second chance book for Marissa Meyer because I DNF'd Heartless earlier this year. But I've heard really good things about this book, and it's YA, so I'm hoping it'll read quick. So I'm going to start this tonight. I don't know how far I'll get, but I am excited. I will check back in once I've read enough to have an opinion. So I've been reading Renegades for a little bit tonight, and I'm about 100 pages in now. So I can give a little bit of a synopsis about what I think is going on. So we have Nova, who is like our main anarchist character, which is like the villain gang of superheroes. And then we have Adrian, who is part of the Renegades, which is the good people, essentially. So there are these people called prodigies that have special powers, and that's what the Renegades and the anarchists are made of, is these groups of people that have decided to pick a side, and they have powers because they're considered prodigies. So the beginning opens up with the reason that Nova doesn't like the Renegades and she wanted to go against them, and her connection to why she sided with the anarchists. And you meet her as like a child, and then it jumps 10 years to where she's like actively fighting against the Renegades, and she meets Adrian as himself, and then as she's fighting the Renegades, she ends up meeting his alter ego but doesn't know it's him, and even like his people don't know it's him. It's weird. His situation's weird because like he's aligned with the Renegades and they know he has power, but they don't know he has all the powers that he has yet. So that's kind of a weird situation. And I just got to the point where we're understanding why Adrian himself is very much so against the anarchists, and why he's a renegade and his connection to the Renegades, and why when he was fighting Nova as Nightmare, because that's what she's considered, and he's called the Sentinel, I think is his name. When they're fighting each other during the initial like interaction with like her and a bunch of the Renegades, she says something to him that triggered a memory, and now he thinks she either knows something or is involved with something that happened in his past, and he wants to know who she actually is. So it's like real superhero thing, like nobody knows who the superheroes really are underneath their masks or their armor or whatever they're wearing. So they just know them by their superhero names. I think there's like this renegade trial kind of thing coming up, I think, where you can like audition to be a renegade, something like that. It almost seems like, you know, like a trial where it's kind of like they just want to become a renegade, so they have to go and prove themselves. In my mind, I'm thinking like the NFL Combine, where you kind of go and you impress, where you go and you kind of try to impress like the coaches and stuff to hopefully get picked for the team. I feel like that's what it's going to be, but I don't know yet. And I think she might take part in it, because I think there's a part where they must meet each other. Yeah, because there's something, it says like as she gets closer to her target, she meets Adrian, a renegade boy who believes in justice, and in Nova. But Nova's allegiance is to a villain who has power to end them both. So there's still things I have questions about. I assume that there's going to be some type of a relationship coming from those two, but I don't know yet. So we'll see. So far, it's good. I'm enjoying it way more than Heartless. So I do think that I am going to like this book, at least in this series, and I will finish it unless it takes a huge turn. But like with Heartless, I couldn't even, like, I was forcing myself to read it from the start. So this isn't the case for that. It's moving pretty fast. It's reading pretty much like a YA. This is my first like sci-fi book, so it's a little bit different, but I'm enjoying it so far. I will continue reading tonight, and I will pick up with you guys tomorrow when I get home from work. Today was a day. Not a good day. But I'm home now. And page count from yesterday, which would have been Wednesday because today is Thursday, I read like 15 pages from the Michael Bolton book. I read 130 pages from the last book of Eleanor Dare and 178 pages of Renegades. So that was like 323 pages according to my app that tracks that. As of today, I have read another 94 pages of Renegades. And I think that's about halfway. I'm like page 270. And the book's like 550 pages. So yeah, that's about halfway. And I'm still enjoying it. I feel like sometimes it's moving a little slow. For the most part, it moves fast, but I'm just gonna keep going. I don't know how, I'm probably not gonna finish this tonight, but I think I'll finish it up tomorrow at work probably, depending on how far I get tonight before I fall asleep. And then I might start, I'm probably gonna start another book tomorrow, so let me grab that. I'm back. So the next book on my TBR for the month is The Atlas Complex, which is the third and final book in the Atlas 6 trilogy. So I'm going to be reading this once I finish up Renegades. So I don't know, it'll depend on how far I get tomorrow or tonight with whether or not I take this to work to start at lunch, or just when I finish Renegade, I finish Renegades and then I'll start the Atlas Complex tomorrow night. But I will be starting that book tomorrow. I will not be finishing it tomorrow, so it will not technically be finished within this work week or counted towards like the pages I read this week, anything that I don't read tomorrow. But I may wait until I'm done with the book to close out the vlog just so that I can give my final thoughts on that book. Today's Thursday, so I have tonight and tomorrow, and then I can do all my totals for the pages, and you can see my average amount of pages, or at least like what I usually get through in a week when I read. Yesterday I got to read a little bit more. Today I didn't get home till late because I had to stay at work a little bit later to deal with some issues, so it evens out because I didn't think this week would be realistic with how much I got to read yesterday, but because of today I think it'll even itself out. So I will touch base with you all tomorrow at some point in the evening. So I just got home from work, so this is actually like early evening, and I finished Renegades at lunch today. I have not started the next book, but I finished Renegades. I enjoyed this book, definitely, obviously more than Heartless, because I finished this one and I didn't finish Heartless. I did guess, like I think there was supposed to be like a surprise at the end. I kind of guessed it. I don't know if it was supposed to be, you weren't supposed to know it was coming, because I kind of did, but I'm excited to read the next one. I don't know when I'll pick it up, but I do think I'm gonna at least continue into the next book and see what that goes with. But I enjoyed this. I think it's gonna be like a 4-star. That's what I'm thinking I'm at right now. But I have like, I'm teetering a little, maybe like 3.75. I don't know exactly if I'm gonna give it a 4, but it was still really good. I enjoyed it. Definitely different from anything I've read. So, and then next I will grab the Atlas Complex. Yeah, is that the last one? I don't even know. Yeah, the Atlas Complex will be the next book I read, and I do not anticipate finishing that this evening, so I will have to get back to that one tomorrow, which won't count towards the page count for the week because that will be Saturday. But yesterday I read 240 pages, so less than the day before, but it was also Renegades, which was a YA book, and that's all I read, and I usually can read those a little faster. So page count doesn't tell the entire story, because some books I can get through a page in 30 seconds. Some days, some I get through in a minute. It takes me to get through the page. I average like a minute to half a minute for pages, depending on the type of book and if it's YA, if it's romance, I can usually get through those a little faster. If it's fantasy, thriller's usually in the middle. Fantasies usually take me a little bit longer to read, but I will update tomorrow, maybe tonight, and then tomorrow with the final count for every day. So I lied. I didn't end up picking up a book earlier in the evening before I went to dinner, and I just got back from dinner, and my brain cannot go into the Atlas Complex right now, just because like this week at work was ridiculous. I'm just tired and I just need a brain break. So, and not like that Renegades was hard to read, but it was a sci-fi fantasy kind of book. So the next book I wanted to read after the Atlas Complex is Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I think tonight I do want to read something because I just want to stop thinking about work, or I would just mindlessly sit and scroll, but I'm gonna pick this one up because I think I wanted to get through both of these books this weekend, And I think if I start with this one, I'm more likely to get through both of them. If I start with the Atlas Complex tonight, I'm just gonna fall asleep and it's not gonna happen. But I think this, I could get through a decent amount tonight. So this is the book I'm gonna pick up, and then I will touch base tomorrow with the final page count. Okay, everyone, so it's time to wrap this up. It is a few days later, so I just forgot to film an outro. So this was realistically how much I read in a week with working a 40-hour job. And I started Monday with The Deal. I read a total of 182 pages on Monday. 66 pages were from this book. I loved this. I just want to read the whole rest of the series. It's been a while since a romance got me like this, and I don't know that I'll like the other ones as much as this one because I've heard that this is everybody's favorite couple, but we'll see because I don't always agree with everybody on romance series, but we'll see. I ended up giving this 4.5 stars, which is such a high rating for me for a romance, and 2.5 on the spice, and I've already bought the second book and I'm so looking forward to it. I just loved Garrett and Hannah's relationship, and I love Garrett Graham. He just treated her perfectly and like a princess, and I'm so excited to continue this and to do the other mini-series within the Briar U world. Very much enjoyed this. Friends to lovers. What was it, tutors? It kind of was fake dating, but it was also a little bit friends to lovers because I feel like they did get to know each other before they really started dating because she was tutoring him and they were hanging out a lot, but they were definitely attracted to each other from the start, but loved this. I then read, which I don't have on me, I don't have a dust jacket, so I'm not even gonna hold up the other book, is The Soul of It All, which is Michael Bolton's autobiography memoir that he wrote, and I read only 11 pages of that. I've only been reading a chapter at a time because nonfiction takes me a little bit of time to get through. And then I read 105 pages of The Lost Book of Eleanor Dare. So that was Monday. Tuesday, I read a total of 199 pages, and they were all from this book. That's all I have to say about Tuesday. Wednesday, I finished this book. I read a total of 323 pages because I did get to come home a little bit early that day, and only because I was at a conference and I was closer to home than normal. It usually takes me quite some time to get home, but I was halfway home already. So I did get a little bit extra reading in that day, and I read 130 pages of this, finished it up. While at times this was slow moving, this was a historical fiction. At times it was slow moving. I felt like things were being drawn out and repetitive, but it was still a very interesting story. I'm very fascinated by the Roanoke colony that went missing, the lost colony. It was kind of like a family fiction book too, because it was about this woman and her daughter, Alice and Penn, and them kind of coming to terms with a new life because her husband was killed in the war. So not only has she lost her husband, but Penn's lost her dad, and coming to terms with the new world that they're living in because of the war, and themselves as descendants of Eleanor Dare. So I really enjoyed this. It was, like I said, slow moving at times, but overall I enjoyed this book. I would recommend it if historical fiction is your thing. I gave this 3.5 stars and just half on the spice. There was a little bit of a romance, which is probably what kept me interested towards the end because it didn't really develop until then, but it was very minimal part of the story. It was mainly focused on Penn and Alice, but did enjoy that. So I finished that book up. I then read 15 pages of The Soul of It All, and then I picked up The Renegades by Marissa Meyer to start, and I read 178 pages in this book. Thursday, Renegades is all I read. I read 240 pages from this. And then Friday, I read a total of 300 pages even, 134 pages from Renegades, and I really enjoyed this book. I was so skeptical going into another Marissa Meyer book after I DNF'd Heartless in January, so this was the one I just felt most comfortable picking up. I know she has the Lunar Chronicles, which is the Cinder book, is I think the first one in there, and people like that, but I've heard such good things about Renegades, and it's kind of sci-fi, so it's a little bit different than what Heartless was, and I wanted to give her another shot, and I do not regret it. Again, I feel like there were times in this book that it was repetitive, and she was trying to drive home a point that I think was very apparent, a little bit too much, but I did enjoy this. It is YA, so while there was a little bit of romance, it was mainly focused on Nova kind of coming into what she really wants to be and understanding what's going on in the world and that things aren't as they seem. There were deeper meanings in this. The ending was great. I can't wait to pick up. I think the next one is Arch Enemies. I don't have it yet. I will pick it up at some point, but I'm excited to read that. I gave this 3.75 and there was no spice, so 0 on the spice. Also on Friday, because I still had time, I picked up Beach Read by Emily Henry, and I read 166 pages of this. So I did not finish this within the work week, but I did finish it over the weekend. I finished it the next morning, actually. And I loved this book. I loved it more than Happy Place. It was still not a 5-star. It was a 4.5, which 2 4.5 romance novels in 1 week, that's pretty good for me. So I liked Gus's character a lot more than I liked Win, and Happy Place is the only other book I've read by her at this point. So that's the only thing I have to compare it to. I still enjoyed the Happy Place story, I think, more than the underlying story in this, but I enjoyed the romance more in Beach Read than I did in Happy Place. I didn't really like the romance in Happy Place, but I liked the underlying storyline of friends growing up and learning how to like adapt and change as your lives are changing and you're growing apart, but you also can still make it work. So I did enjoy that part of it, but the romance kind of fell flat for me. This romance was heartwarming and just like ripped me apart at times, but I just loved it. I loved the way they interacted with each other and the way that you could just tell they both really cared about each other. So like I said, 4.5 stars for this and 1.5 on spice. It wasn't super spicy, which I also really enjoyed. And it was just kind of fun what they were doing and how they managed to like fit so well in each other's lives without really changing what the other was doing or interfering with the other's career and ambitions and stuff. I really enjoyed that part of it. So that was a realistic reading week for me. Let's tally up. Pages are also subjective. Like I can read some books a lot faster. So there are days where I'm going to get through like more pages than normal, like thrillers. I can read really fast. Romance novels, I can read really fast. Fantasy tend to slow me down. The historical fiction I didn't read very fast. But this week in total, I read 1,244 pages, which is probably average for me, I would say, based on what I read in a month. But again, I can have months where I read way more books and way less pages. It just depends. Or I could have it. The page count doesn't always offset the amount of books I read. Again, how fast I read them, how many pages are in a book, that really does impact the overall on that. Also how well I'm enjoying it, because that does impact how quickly I read something. So that was it for this week. That was kind of fun. I'll probably do this again at some point with just like some TBR books in maybe a few months. But it was interesting. I do track how many pages I read normally anyway, but it was cool to look back at it as just a work week, because the weekends are really where I like crank out books because I can sit down and not worry about anything. If you liked this video, let me know in the comments. Let me know if you liked any of these books, if you've read any of these books, if you want to read these. And if you did enjoy, I would love for you to subscribe and like the video so that we can spend some more time together in the future talking about books. And I hope to see you all in the next video.